so this is part 2 of our presentation on nouns. I'm going to apologize. I'm having trouble making words work today. This is like the 5th time I've started the second part of this presentation because I keep stumbling over my words. So just kind of bear with me if that happens. So last time we talked about what nouns are. So they're persons, places, things, ideas, events, emotions, animals, anything like that. We talked about how to test for a noun. So the noun test, if you put the word the before a word or phrase and it makes sense, it's functioning as a noun, even if it doesn't initially seem like it. We used the example of running. Running is fun. Running normally we would think of as a verb, but in that case, it's functioning as a noun. So you could say the running is fun. And since that makes sense, running is functioning as a noun. That was actually in one of the tests last week. I didn't explain it that way, but finding my car keys is functioning as the subject of the sentence, even though the word finding appears to be a verb. So we also talked about types of nouns, so common versus proper. Remember, common nouns are just general nouns, proper nouns are named nouns. Abstract versus concrete. Concrete is something that you can, it's tangible, you can sense it, you can touch it, taste it, smell it, anything like that, hear it. A abstract noun is something that has no physical form. We talked about countable versus uncountable. Those are kind of self-explanatory. A count noun is something you can count. An uncountable or mass noun is something you can't. And we briefly talked about compound and collective nouns. Compound nouns being 2 or more nouns or words put together to make a new concept. Collective nouns being a group of something like team that is functioning as a single entity. And we talked about capitalization. We talked about capitalizing proper nouns and the fact that you pretty much only capitalize proper nouns, the only type you capitalize. And there are only a couple of other situations where we capitalize a word in a sentence that is not a proper noun. So now we're going to talk about some functions of nouns in a sentence. I have seen some opportunities with this in your paragraphs where you may have a verb, but it's not, you don't list who it's receiving. So if you see that, if you see me say whom or what in question mark, that's normally what I'm referring to, is the need to include an object. So a subject, we've talked a lot about subjects. A subject is the thing that is the focus of the sentence. It's the entity that is doing or being the verb. So the girl gives a gift to the boy. The girl is the one doing the giving. So that is the subject of that sentence. The verb is gives. Objects are the recipient of the verb. So if you're giving something, what are you giving? They can be direct or indirect. So the direct object would be a gift. What is being given to the boy? And the indirect object is who is receiving the direct object. So in this case, it would be the boy. So we're not going to worry too much about identifying direct or indirect objects here. Just know that you have to, with a lot of verbs, you do have to have a direct object and often an indirect object, especially with give. So the best way to test for that is just kind of to read it and see if the sentence makes sense on its own without any outside information. Let's say I said the girl gives a gift. Okay, to whom? We don't know to whom, so you would need to include the boy, to who the gift is being given to. Don't confuse indirect and direct objects with the object of the preposition. The object of the preposition always follows a preposition, and it is showing a relationship in time or space. So the girl flies on a plane to Chicago. The girl flies. How is the girl flying? On what is she flying? Oh, she's flying on a plane. So on is the preposition. A plane is the object of the preposition. Where is she going? To Chicago. To is the preposition. Chicago is the object of the preposition. I'm not going to test you on the differences between indirect, direct objects and objects of prepositions, so don't worry about that. Just know that if you have a preposition, you need to have an object after it. And if you have a verb, often you want to test to see if you need to have a recipient of that verb, which is the direct or indirect object. So now we're going to talk about plurals, and then we're going to talk about possessives. And these are another couple areas where a lot of students struggle. Both plurals and possessives are indicated by adding s. So it can be kind of confusing, but they function very differently. So before we go into those details, count nouns can be singular or plural. So singular means that there's one. Plural means that there's more than one. So if you see me say, you have a plural subject, so you need a plural verb, what I mean is that there is more than one in the noun. So dogs are cute. There's more than one dog being discussed. It's plural. If I said the dog is cute, there's one dog being discussed. So it's singular. And I just wanted to recap what those words mean. So forming plurals with common, compound, concrete, and collective nouns. These nouns all generally have a singular and a plural form. So you make it plural by adding s or es most of the time. There are a few irregular verbs or irregular nouns, and we'll talk about them in a minute. But so to make dog plural, you would just add an s, dogs. Mass and abstract nouns typically do not have a plural form because they aren't something that you can count, right? So an uncountable, you can't have multiple of something that can't be counted, or you can't have multiple of something that you can't physically have in your hand and count. So they don't have plural forms, and they're always singular. So hate is a difficult emotion. Hate, you can't have 4 hates. So if you tried to make it plural, it wouldn't make sense. Hates are difficult emotions. That doesn't make any sense. It has to be singular. So how to make plurals? And I actually like this graphic a lot. So plural nouns are words used to indicate that there is more than one person, place, animal, thing, idea, instance, more than one of a countable noun. So for most nouns, you just add s at the end of the word. So car becomes cars, desk becomes desks, hand becomes hands, tree becomes trees, ball becomes balls. For some words that end with o, you're going to add es to the end of the word. For nouns that already end in s or a sound like s, you add es. So s, x, z, ch, and sh, all of those have a s sound. So we're going to add the es to kind of differentiate between the different s's. Otherwise, it just gets like a lot of s's. So boss becomes bosses because boss would just be really difficult to understand. Box becomes boxes because boxes just doesn't really work. Same with topazes, dishes. And then there are some words that if they just end with o and you only add s. Your grammar check or your word or whatever spell check you use will more than likely catch it. If it doesn't, I'll probably make a note of it. But that's a minor spelling thing that most people aren't going to pay a whole lot of attention to. So, most nouns, you add s at the end of the word. Nouns that have an s sound at the end of the word, it's es. And occasionally, o's are weird. So, possessives. Possessives are... they also tend to end in s, but they function very differently than plurals. You remember, plurals were saying there's more than one of something. Possessive nouns are showing ownership of another noun in a sentence. So, for example, the boy's dog is brown. The dog belongs to the boy, at least grammatically. Possessive phrases generally have 2 nouns in a row. So that's one way you can kind of look to test whether it's plural or possessive. Plural nouns, unless they're plural possessive, are typically not going to be 2 nouns in a row. So the city's plans are incomplete. The plans belong to the city. There are 2 nouns in a row, city and plans. Possessives are generally formed by adding an apostrophe and sometimes an s to the end of the noun that owns the other noun. And that's normally the first of the 2 nouns. So you can see the apostrophe s is attached to boys in the boy's dog. It's attached to cities in the city's plans. So possessive noun reviews. This is kind of a really overly simplified version of the rules. If you have one entity that is owning things, so the second noun is being owned by a singular noun, then it's generally apostrophe s. The giraffe's boots. You have one giraffe, even if you have multiple boots. If you have a plural noun showing ownership, it's typically s and then apostrophe. The giraffe's boots, because giraffe is plural there. You have 2 giraffes. So kind of going into a little bit more detail on forming possessives, if you have a singular noun, you will typically add apostrophe S to the end of the word. The child's toy. If you have a plural noun that is not ending in S, you're going to add S if there's not already an S, and apostrophe to the word. So the cat's food. So if you come from singular, you add the S to make it plural, and then you add the apostrophe after it to make it possessive. If the plural or noun already ends in S, then the S is already there. So you don't have to add another S to it. So you're only going to make it the Joneses' house. There is an exception to this, which is a singular noun ending in S. If a singular noun is ending in S already, you still add apostrophe and S to it. So here's kind of the summary of these rules. To change a singular noun into a singular possessive noun, add apostrophe S. It doesn't matter if the singular noun already ends in S. So the name of my son is Chris. My son's name is Chris. The hair of Chris is brown. Chris's hair is brown. You can see Chris already ended in S, so we put apostrophe S at the end of it. To change an irregular plural noun into a possessive, you're going to add apostrophe S as well. So the men's books are on the table. So men is already plural, but you're going to add apostrophe S to the end of it to indicate possession. The same with children's. If it already ends in S, then you don't add an additional S to it. So the bases, let's see, that's not a good one. The classes. So CLASSES, classes is already plural. It already ends in S. We would just add an apostrophe to it. To change a regular plural noun into a possessive, add only an apostrophe. Don't add another S. So the girl's brother is short. The student's problems are sad. So plural versus possessive. As I said, this is something a lot of students struggle with. I'm going to give you a quick break and let you kind of think about the differences between plural and possessive and let that kind of gel for a second before we start talking about how to differentiate between the two and when you use each. So I'm going to be back in just a moment with part 3.